Are we on at this point?
Just confirming that we are almost.
Just want to make sure I'm not delayed here because my internet seemed to be a little shaky. Okay, well, thank you very much. Welcome everyone to the July 6, 2021 Heritage Richmond Hill meeting. Tonight's meeting is an electronic meeting being held during an emergency pursuant to section 238, 3.3 of the Municipal Act 2001. Due to efforts to contain the spread of COVID-19 and to protect all individuals, city facilities will not be open to the public to attend meetings until further notice. We have received regrets from Councillor Silivets and Alatoire for tonight's meeting. The public had the opportunity to submit written correspondence regarding agenda matters by email to the clerk's office. All written correspondence received by noon today would have been included on the agenda, but there was none received. The public has also had the opportunity to apply to appear as an electronic delegation, either by video conference or by telephone by noon today. There were no delegation requests received. With that, can I please ask the clerks to confirm that we have quorum for this meeting?
I can confirm that we do have quorum for this meeting.
Thank you very much. Can I have a motion to adopt the agenda tonight? Motion to adopt the agenda. Thank you, Councillor West. All those in favor? Are there any opposed? Comments? Seeing none, the agenda is approved. Thank you. Please raise your hand or say so if there are any peculiar interests that you would like to disclose tonight. I see none. Thank you very much. And I hear none. Thank you. Moving on. Can I have a motion to adopt the minutes of the previous meeting that was held on June 8th, 2021? Thank you, Dan. All those in favor of the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the minutes of our previous meeting are approved. Thank you. Thank you, Dan. Sure. All those in favor of the adoption of the minutes of the previous meeting? Are there any opposed? Seeing none, the minutes of our previous meeting are approved.
We've obviously entered a time warp. Everybody just fasten your seatbelts.
Yes. Who's that good sounding guy?
In the past.
Okay. I believe there are no delegations, so we'll move on to item number 5.1, scheduled business. Can I have a motion for item 5.1, please? This is for the heritage permit application. Do I have a mover of item 5.1? Sorry, thank you, Barb. I see your hand now. Discussion. Any questions, comments for staff on this item? It seemed straightforward, a structure at the back of a backyard to be erected, but any comments or questions are welcome. Marge, please go ahead.
Yeah, in reading the report about how that structure was put up, it was supposed to be a temporary structure. I have a hard time believing that. And it looked something quite permanent. I believe I've seen the ads for those. They're quite expensive. So, you know, I don't know how much it really affects his argument, but I don't believe that the owner's comments that it was intended to be only temporary. I don't know if it affects anything, but I did want to raise that point.
Thank you, Marge. Any other comments or questions for staff? Sorry, Marge, was that a question for staff or just a comment?
If the staff could comment on it, that would be good.
Okay.
Through you, Mr. Chair.
Yes.
That the applicant did come forward and say that it was a temporary structure. When staff looked over the plans and took a closer look at the structure, they confirmed that with municipal policies, it is considered a permanent structure.
sorry, did you say it is
That's
confirmed a
what I
permanent
read,
structure or temporary?
I'm just saying that
It's considered a permanent structure.
A permanent structure.
Mhm.
Any other questions for staff or comments? Dan, I see your hand up. Please go ahead.
Thanks. Just one quick question. It appeared to me that like it wasn't really visible from the front. Um, is that true? Like, I mean, to me, like if it's very visible, then I guess there'd be some questions as to how it look with the rest of the property in the building. But from what I could tell, it appears to me it's sort of towards the back and off to the side, so you really can't see it from the front.
That seemed to be what was written in the report, that it's not visible, if I understood correctly. Would staff confirm that?
Yes, that's correct. If you look on page 3 of the report, you can see the Google Street View of what the structure looks like from the road, and it's is partially blocked by the Heritage House.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions, comments before we call the vote on that item number 5.1? Okay, so all those in favor of the recommendation? Thank you. Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. Thank you very much. That is approved. Moving on to item 5.2, designation subcommittee. Verbal update. Dan, is there a designation subcommittee verbal update for today?
Yeah, well, I just have 2 points, and actually I was going to pass on to Doris and Al for their comments, but I guess they're not here. So the first point I was going to make is, in addition to the presentation I made last meeting with some statistics and showing some of the mapping and stuff, I also did the same sort of thing to the Heritage Center group, and got some good input. There was a lot of interest. I thought that, again, I'd send out to everyone, including the Heritage Committee, further examples, because I find the visual examples that other cities and stuff are using. So I thought I'd send that out just to let everybody know, just more as an FYI and an orientation to this type of system. The one thing that struck me as well was the interest with the Heritage Center. I was going to say this with Doris around, but I'll talk to her separately. I guess we have to be very careful when we talk about education, because they are tasked with doing a lot of education as well. And I guess our focus would be more to our particular area of heritage and to the owners and to the process that we have, that sort of thing. They do a lot with regards to the Dunlop Center tours. I mean, there's a lot that goes on there. I was very amazed at all the work that Maggie does on that committee. So that's one thing I'm just going to keep in my mind. I thought I'd share that with everybody. The second point that I was going to make is, and again, it's through you, Mr. Chair, to staff. I wanted to get a sense. We put that presentation on the list process together, got through to council. But I wanted to get a sense. I know they have a heavy workload, but I want to get a sense as to when we might have something back, or at least a timeline as to what the next steps are. We are testing it through examples that we can get, and finding out some good information actually on strengths, weaknesses, that sort of stuff. And I share that with staff. But I wanted to get a sense for what their workload is and the timing that we can look at with regards to I guess, a report back to the HRH for us to make a recommendation to council.
So Dan, on the first item, with regards to the education, maybe I'll ask staff a question and then we'll go to your second point. And I'm trying to remember in the past years, there was an education subcommittee that I believe received some funding, or perhaps through recommendations to council, some funding was provided to staff to conduct certain work or educational or prepare educational items of sorts. Is that correct? Is my recollection correct there? And if so, like, how can we potentially bring that back? Because there seems to be the need, and I'm just kind of referring to the minutes of the previous meeting as well, hearing people talk about, education and the need for some level of, educational activity through HRH. So I don't know if someone on staff could answer that, and then we'll go to the second point.
Through the chairs, my recollection is that we really, in my experience in the city of Richmond Hill, I don't recall having any specific funding for education. We do have a yearly funding to do research on specific properties, like heritage research, and we generally try to do 3 every year, depending on, we haven't had an increase in funding in a while, so it started with maybe 5 properties, and now we can do maybe only 3. In the previous terms of Heritage Richmond Hill, there used to be this day called Culture Days, and Heritage Richmond Hill has their own subcommittee to actually, create program as part of that Culture Day, be it walking tours, and the Heritage Richmond Hill members themselves would set up, pamphlets and that kind of thing as part of the education process. And that is really as much as I know. We have had a lot of partnership with the Heritage Center, and Maggie McKenzie has been really the one who has done a lot of walking tours in the downtown. And we did have a coordinated effort in preparing the tour material and that kind of thing. And that is the kind of material that she's been using since that time. So the activity of the Heritage Center is much more of an engagement with the community at the village core area, and very specifically to most of the heritage houses within that area. Whereas Heritage Richmond Hills Road has generally been focusing on advising council on matters related to the Ontario Heritage Act.
Okay, thank you very much. That makes sense. And I think, Dan, if I'm, I not to paraphrase what you said, but you alluded to perhaps an overlap in what's being done already, as it relates to what HRH could potentially undertake. And I think, maybe in future conversations that we have, we can discuss as a committee whether we want to bring anything to the committee as a subcommittee or not. And if we do, then how does that, how do we prevent that kind of redundancy if there's already efforts being put out there, or how do we build on that momentum that already exists? Is that fair to say, Dan, based on what you?
Yeah, and Joanne raises a good point, and you do too. I guess we have to be careful using the term education because, there could be three different categories like education, and training and marketing, because those 3 things sometimes are used interspersely. And when I say marketing, maybe it's advertising, what our role is, what our purpose is when we list properties, what that means to people, the positive sides of it, that sort of thing. Maybe that's not it could be called education to the public as a whole or to the owners, but It's also in a sense like a marketing of our heritage culture. So whereas something that the Heritage Center does is more of an education, to the public as a whole with the existing designated properties and our past, because they maintain the museum, that sort of thing. So I'm sort of learning from this. I don't know if staff has some clarification, because certainly I don't think we really want to do an overlap, as you say, and maybe we should be careful of the terms. I mean, we haven't had within the subcommittee with Doris, I know she's sort of leading this. We haven't had a discussion on the terminology that we should be careful in using here. So just to reinforce what you're saying, Chair, I think we do have to have further discussions and maybe just be a little more careful. And if Joanna or Pamela could give some advice as to, maybe navigating through the terminology that we should use and where our focus should be, that would be very helpful as well.
Thank you, Dan. Any other thoughts on this topic before we move on to the second question? So perhaps something we can maybe discuss offline again, Dan, and just kind of brainstorm a bit through the designation subcommittee and see if this may result in a new committee or subcommittee that we strike under HRH or not, and we'll perhaps report back next time we meet. The second question you had for staff was regarding some timelines on a previous item that you were interested in hearing about. Over to staff. Was the question clear, or would you like Dan to repeat that?
Through the chair, I think that is clear. We hear it. We have a discussion together, Pamela and I, and we are prepared to provide you guys with a presentation of our thoughts in the next Heritage Committee meeting, which is September. And then we will just provide what our initial thinking is and generally what we have been speaking to Dan on the side about, because I think that is probably the best way to move forward, where everybody would actually share the communication that we have with the subcommittee and have a clear idea from everybody's perspective, what would the next step be. I think that is probably the simplest and most direct way to move this forward.
Thank you. Dan, any other comments on that or additional verbal updates you might have?
No, that makes sense to me. I just wasn't sure what your workload was. I just wanted a sense of timing, and I agree 100% that your comments back and some of the side discussions we've had. There are some pluses and minuses that we need to discuss as a group. There probably is some support mechanisms in there, and I think to the point that you're making on the education, Mr. Chair, there may be necessary some budget to help with regards to some of the tasks that the subcommittee would take on with regards to doing some of the research and doing a proper evaluation on some of these. Again, the idea is to really try to filter things out and reduce the workload on staff. So I think there's a benefit sort of thing that we could put together as well. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean, it may come to a point where we actually make a request to council for funding. I mean, there's no harm in asking if we get to that point. I'm just putting this out there that, let's get, creative about this a little bit and see what we think makes sense as a committee, as a HRH committee and as a subcommittee. Okay, excellent. Thank you very much for that verbal update, Dan. good conversations overall. Let's move on then. Maybe our next meeting will be September 14th. Holy cow, the year's over. Can I have a motion for the approval of the date of our next meeting, which is Tuesday, September 14th? Thank you, Marge. All those in favor of that date? Are there any opposed? I see none opposed. So that seems to be it on the agenda. That was a pretty quick meeting, our last meeting of the year. So thank you everyone for joining tonight. Thanks to the clerk's office for keeping us so very well organized throughout the year. And I can't thank staff enough for their patience with us and their professionalism. And thank you very much to the volunteers here on HRH and to our counselors.
Have a
Hopefully you
great
all
summer,
enjoy your
everybody.
summer. Take care, and we'll see you hopefully in September. Bye, everyone.
Take care. Happy
Sorry,
summer.
we do need a motion to adjourn.
Oh, right.
Oh, yeah, I'm getting ahead of myself. Not so fast. So can I have a motion to adjourn the meeting? James, thank you very much. All those in favor? Any opposed? I see none. That is approved. Thank you, everyone. Bye again.
Good night.
Cheers.